Okay, welcome to our workshop today. Thank you for attending. My name is Richard Swan. I am the Associate Director of the Center for Teaching and Learning. And I am pleased to let you know that Michael Whitchurch from the library will be conducting today's workshop on open educational resources and some of the other things that you can access through the library. And so with that, I will turn the time over to Michael and take it away.
All right, thank you so much, Richard. It truly is a pleasure to be here today. This is the second time I've done this, so hopefully things are working well. I'm going to share my screen. A couple of things that I want to get out of the way early. First off, the library is here to help you through whatever we can do when it comes to finding content for your courses. The agenda today will be the following. As it shows on the screen, we're going to talk a little bit about copyright and Creative Commons, then a little about to do some defining is what we're doing at the beginning. We'll define affordability and OER, and then the meat of this is how to find affordable and open resources for your courses. Now, another thing for me to point out is that I am not a subject expert. I am a generalist. I am faculty. I do a lot of instructing for the first-year writing program and the advanced writing program. I do a lot with technology, as you'll see partially in this. I've been in the library field for quite a bit of time, and I've seen the transition from books to online resources. And there's such a plethora of what we've got that it's good for us to understand what we can do to help our students. So let's get into this. First, definitions. Oh, and by the way, if you have questions, feel free to ask them in the chat. Feel free to unmute if you've got them. I want to make sure the questions are answered at the time that you need the answer. So if it's better to wait till the end for you, that's great. Otherwise, just interrupt if it's pertinent to what I'm discussing right now, or you want something discussed a little better, just let me know. So on to the definitions, copyright and Creative Commons. And these definitions give us a good foundation of where we're going with open educational resources. So copyright, the primary objective of copyright is to induce and reward authors through provision of property rights to create new works and to make these works available to the public to enjoy. I'm not going to read the rest. Feel free to do that. In essence, copyright was created to encourage innovation, to take what other people have done and innovate on that to create something better. Most of the things we have today that are so amazing come because copyright was protected and people felt free to share what they have without their rights being infringed upon. Next, Creative Commons. Now, Creative Commons works with copyright. It is not something separate. Creative Commons is a nonprofit organization that helps overcome legal obstacles to the sharing of knowledge and creativity to address the world's pressing challenges. What Creative Commons does is it kind of sits on top of copyright as a whole. What that means is, as the copyright holder, you can determine how someone else can use your work, whether that work is a piece of art, perhaps it's a photograph, or perhaps it's a paper that you've written, a textbook, maybe a presentation or demonstration of something. What you own as a copyright holder, instead of someone coming to you saying, I would like to use it in this context, you can say, I've already given the ways I want you to use it. Now, others can also just come to you and ask for more rights. But in essence, these rights include these attributes at the bottom. These are things you can assign to a Creative Commons or a copyrighted work to give someone rights of how they can use it. So the first is attribution. That is given to all Creative Commons licenses. That means whenever they use your work, however they use it, you need to be attributed as the primary or principal first author of that work. The next one is share alike. What that means is if someone uses your work in something that they've created, what they've created needs to be shared with this same Creative Commons license. The next is no derivatives. What that means, if you put this onto your work, no one has the right to change what you have created. And then lastly, non-commercial. People are free to use these works that you've given rights to, but they cannot make money with those. All of these can be used in conjunction. You can mix and match depending on what rights you want others to have to your copyrighted works. Questions about this, just let me know. I don't have time really to go in depth on it here, but I am very willing to speak to anyone who has questions about any of these attributes or any way that you can assign those to your copyrighted works. So now let's go on to affordability and OER. Affordability is efforts made to reduce the cost of attending college, but primarily we want to maintain or improve the quality of education for the students. These can include negotiating with publishers for lower course materials costs, or leveraging existing campus resources such as ILO Course Reserve and databases. And I have some examples of these that I want to discuss as well. Examples from campus, actually. So now what is OER? Open educational resources are teaching, learning, and research materials in any medium that reside in the public domain or have been released under an open license that permits no cost access, use, adaptation, and redistribution with no or limited restrictions. And Creative Commons is very similar, something in the public domain or licensed in a manner that provides everyone with free and perpetual permission to engage in the 5R activities, which I am going to discuss later, what those 5Rs. In essence, open educational materials are free to use. They're licensed for 5R use. Now these are the 5Rs: to retain, revise, remix, reuse, and redistribute the content. And just as a side note, these 5Rs were actually developed by David, and the last name just left me. I had it.
Wiley.
Thank you. David Wiley. David Wiley, who was in the Instructional Psychology and Technology department. He developed these, and he, in large part, is seen as the godfather of open educational resources for the amazing amount of work he's done with it. So OER are licensed for 5R use, high quality, and they are often reviewed by other faculty around the country, sometimes around the world. It gives first day access to the students. So this content, they're not waiting for Amazon to send them something, or is the BYU store going to run out of it? You don't have to worry about photocopying things, just it's there and they have access to it. And then they are simple to adopt or adapt. Simple does not mean easy. Most often it is easy, but there are times when there are issues that we run into. So this is what OER is. This is what we're talking about today. So here are some examples of the 3 ways that you can use open educational resources. They are adopt, adapt, and create. So adopting is taking course content wholesale and using it in your course. Could be a textbook, it could be slides, quiz banks, whatever it is. Adopting it is just taking it wholesale and putting it into your course. An example of this is psychological science, where they took content and just adapted it or adopted it for their course. The next is adapt, and that is, there are different ways to adapt. The example I have here is project management for instructional designers. Again, this is David Wiley who did this text. He found an open textbook called Project Management, but he was teaching instructional designers. So he took that project management text, he stripped out all of the examples and everything that dealt with a different field than instructional designers. And he had his students, which is where open pedagogy comes in, he had his students create examples, case studies, do some editing on the text, and make it work for his instructional designer course. And that's adapting it. That's one way to adapt. Another way to adapt is to find open resources from multiple places, multiple open sources, and maybe a chapter here, a chapter there, and bring them all together into a single text that you've created, but using open sources. And that can be a very powerful tool because you can put the content in the order you want from wherever you can find these open sources. The last one here is create, and that is creating a brand new text. One thing I will point out is that creating open resources, while it is free for the students in the end, is not free to produce, to create. That's the difficult part, and that is trying to find a source of funding that can help produce these. Now, these two examples here, management communication, was for the business writing course in the business school. They developed this text, and it's being used at multiple institutions, and it's freely available online. They got funding from the Friends of the Library and their own department. And then the next one, advanced writing, was developed, spearheaded by Christy Kells-Charles in the English department. They created an advanced writing in the social sciences text. Again, they got a little funding from the library and then their department, and they created this advanced writing in social sciences. What you're looking at here, though, is just advanced writing. So Christy took this advanced writing in social sciences and adapted her own text for a generic advanced writing text. And I just found out yesterday, they are working to create 2 more adaptations of this advanced writing for 2 different advanced writing courses. So adapting these is so powerful. She created the original, the advanced writing, and is now adapting based on her own work. So before we go on, are there questions about definitions? Did I not describe things clearly enough? Is there something you're not quite understanding with what we've covered so far? And I know this is a lot of information, but is there anything that you want me to clarify or talk about more? Yes, and thank you, Richard. Feel free to ask questions in the chat or unmute. Okay, let's move on then. And there will be plenty, oh, another question.
So Annalisa says, I'm wondering about open resource text in other languages,
You know,
particularly literature.
That is actually a very interesting question. What we've found dealing with other languages is there is not a lot. One of the anecdotes that we have is a student who said, you know, I just went and found an older version, like 10 years old, of French, because I figured French hadn't changed all that much. You know, true or not, but there's been very little in other languages, particularly, as you say, literature. It isn't very common, and depending on the language, that would depend on what we're able to find. One thing that I want to make clear in this as well is part of my job is to find these resources. I've been doing this for years, trying to find content for different classes. In addition, we're members of different groups that I can reach out to, and there is so much experience. And in fact, these groups are international. So it's possible that people in other countries have open resources that we can tap into, but we just haven't discovered yet. So feel free to reach out to me. The last slide will have my email address as well and phone number, but reach out to me if there's something in specific you're looking for. If there's a text you're already using, I can look at that, just a table of contents, different content, and try and find something that is similar. Now, again, not being an expert, I'm not going to tell you if it's good or not for you or your course. I will, however, anytime I communicate with a faculty member on campus, I will also copy in your subject librarian on that email, so he or she is aware of the conversations I'm having with you, so they can follow up and help through these processes. Definitely reach out to your librarians and let them know of your needs. Being subject specialists, they can actually help vet some of the content as well. Other questions? Okay, well then let's move on. So affordability, I actually haven't defined affordability yet. Christy's typed in the chat. Christy is here on the call. If you have questions or want to talk to someone about developing a text, talk to Christy. She did an amazing job. So make sure you reach out to her. Couple more things about affordability. Now I said affordability is simply trying to reduce course materials costs for students. And that really what it is. What the studies show is that textbook costs or course materials costs have increased over 800% in the last 30 years. It well outstrips GDP and other measures of financial stability. So what we're trying to do is help students get through their college experience. We're not trying to eliminate costs. That's not possible, especially since there aren't open materials in some of the higher level courses. However, trying to make things more affordable, these are different ways you can do that. Using interlibrary loan, using course reserve, which I know many of you already do. These are excellent opportunities to provide content free of charge to the students. And honestly, the university is already paying for many of these. Particularly this next, increasing the library licenses for texts. The examples below here, the coaching, a realistic perspective, and 5-minute linguist are examples of reaching out to your librarian and finding out if there's a way to increase the number of licenses for a text. These examples, the coaching text was about a $30 textbook. And the student, one of the students in the faculty member's course went to him and said, hey, I found that we have this on the library. Can I just use that one? And the faculty member says, well, I don't see why not. It's the exact same text. So in the conversation I had with him, he asked, is there a way to increase from a single user license, so only one person can access at a time, to a multiple user license? And it turns out that what we did is we paid an extra $17 and increased from 1 license to 3 licenses. And we expected no more than 3 would access at a time. It was a fairly small course. But that was $17 is all that the library paid for that. And then the 5-minute linguist, a similar experience, a faculty member reached out and said, hey, this is available online. What can we do to increase the licenses? And in this case, we increased from a single user license to unlimited. And that cost us, I'm not sure the exact price, but it wasn't that much. And with that money, the library paid, it was definitely less than $100. All of the students in those courses have access to that text. And I actually, after presenting this yesterday, got an email from a faculty that was listening, asking a similar question for a Russian text that she found we had online through the library. And I reached out to our electronic resources librarian, and she wrote back really quickly and said, actually, as many students as need can access this content. So there, the students in that Russian class will no longer have to purchase a text. So the last example we have here is Chem 105, 106. I don't know how many of you are aware of that series, but it is a series of courses, 105, 106. They're usually taught, and you usually take them in sequence. Years ago, the chemistry department was not unified on which text to use. So each faculty member was choosing a text that worked best for the way that he or she taught. They got together realizing that in some cases, students were spending twice as much as they needed to because most introductory chemistry textbooks actually cover the content for both of these courses or both these semesters. And so a student potentially would spend 150 to 200 for one semester and then the same for the next because it's not the same textbook, but they had more or less the same content in the text. They got together and they worked out a single text that they were going to use. Everybody that taught this series was going to use the same text. They actually did evaluate an open textbook and determined that it did not meet the criteria that they needed for their courses, which is awesome. They determined that. But once they decided on a text, they went to the publisher and said, look, we're going to have thousands of students a year taking this. With that, can you give us a price break? And so they knocked it down to around $130 to $150 for 2 semesters for the text. So instead of a student potentially spending $400, it's now $130. So it doesn't eliminate the cost, but it gets the best content for a reduced price. So now let's talk about open educational resources. There are many and many ways to find. I want to point out a couple of sources. Just these links are all here. This recording will be posted, so you can find these later. If you have questions, reach out to me. And I just want to show you some of these. I've got them pulled up. So this Course Affordability and Open Educational Resources is a website that gives faculty highlights, faculty that are doing good work in the open. Kurt Sandholz is the one that spearheaded the MCOM 320 text. And then we have recent news that's here. That's just on the main page. But we have also some other information along the top that can help you find content. The next tab is a guide, a research guide that I created in finding. And we're going to come back to this in a second when I show you how you can find some content. This next one is Scholars Archive. This is the institutional repository for BYU. In here we have faculty papers. We have quite a few journals. You can put video and audio. The theses and dissertations are actually all posted on Scholars Archive. If you're interested in having your works put on Scholars Archive, feel free to contact Ellen Amatangelo, who manages this Scholars Archive. This is an open repository of BYU-related content or content produced by BYU faculty and students. Ed Textbooks is a publishing platform for open text. This was developed by a faculty member in instructional psychology and technology. He actually programmed this site for creating or publishing online open texts. It is a very, very good publishing platform. I've used it. It's very simple. In fact, right here you can see the advanced writing text that Christy Cowles-Charles, and this is the adaptation of the first one that she did. Rick West is a professor on campus. Charles Graham is a professor on campus. So there are so many possibilities with this. Royce Kimmons actually is the person who developed it, and he's also published in the open. So this is a platform you can use for publishing open textbooks. There are others, and feel free to reach out if you want guidance on that. The last tab here I want to show is our directory page, but this is showing the subjects and the librarians who cover these subjects. These librarians are awesome, and they are so willing to help you with whatever you need when it comes to content the library can help you provide to your students. Reach out to them and let them know that you may have questions, you want some help with something, you want help finding something. If they're uncomfortable trying to find content, they will reach out to me, and they know that. So finally, actually before we go in that, I see that we've got quite a few quite a few chats. Let me check to see if there are questions.
So one of those, Michael, is how can they know if a book is open resource?
Okay, that's actually a very good question. And that is, most of the time you will find a license, like a Creative Commons license or a similar license attached to it that will say, this is how you can use it. That is most of the way that we do it, is looking at the licenses. That's why the licenses were developed, is to help us as consumers know what content we can use. In fact, if you do a search on Google, there's actually a tool that allows you to find materials that are licensed for reuse. And it doesn't have the Creative Commons license attached to it. Well, they don't call it the Creative Commons licenses, but it's licensed for reuse, and they follow, they understand Creative Commons, so they help that. Let's see. Thank you, Deborah, for talking about Royce Kimmons. Yeah, and Christy mentioned that their text was published through EdTech Books, which is that open site that Royce created. It really is a fabulous source. They started with something else, Top Hat, and made a transition to EdTech Books. Okay, let's see.
Michael, can I while you're
Yeah,
reading, say something? So one of the advantages to doing a book like this online is that Royce has made it so that you can just put, like we have YouTube videos that are in the textbook, that you read the textbook and they're in the textbook, and you watch the video as you're reading, and then you keep going. Or there's discussions that you can have in the textbook, and there's quiz questions, and you can do Quizlets and things all inside the textbook. And then he's actually made it so that you can embed that into a Canvas page. So as they're doing their modules, the book is there, the chapter's there that they can read all inside. So this software there's a lot of potential for engagement, more than just like a paper book. So we've found that the students love the textbook, and they love the online environment. They're used to reading on it. A few years ago, people were a little more nervous, I think, about reading or assigning online textbooks, but students are very used to it, and we've had lots of positive feedback about the environment.
Yeah, and in fact, the feedback that we've received from faculty and students, students are always happy if you say, yeah, your textbook isn't going to cost anything. In fact, they'll cheer for you when you say that.
We get standing ovations when I come to people's classes.
Yeah, they're really happy about the cost, but they're also very pleased with the experience using the textbook. It can be so much more engaging with the text itself, with the multimedia content you can embed in it. And there's just so much you can do. Again, if you have questions about what you can and can't do, let me know. But for the most part, anything you want to do can be done. So Theodore, to answer the second part of your question about scanning the pages to make them available to the students, I'm going to answer that in two parts. The first part is there a text that can meet those same needs that is already open? And that I don't know the answer to, but I'm happy to look for you. The second part is, because we're in this situation of a pandemic, a lot of publishers have actually been more lenient on libraries and what they can and can't scan to provide to students. That is actually a question I would have you discuss with the course reserve people. Talk to them and find out what guidance they can give you. They have been very much in contact with the copyright licensing office on campus, and they're very well aware of the situation and where we are able to bend the law temporarily for the situation we're in currently. I wouldn't be able to answer that for you, but they would. And Richard is right, scanning a whole book is against copyright law, but there may be some exceptions. And again, there may be another open textbook that would fill the need, and perhaps even better, that is already open. So reach out to me and let me know, and we can do some searching, whichever you prefer to do. And if you need the contact information for Course Reserve, just email me and I'm happy to send that to you. So now finding, this guide that I've created, there's a lot of information and a lot of ways that you can find content for your specific subject. We have open journals, there are open platforms, open course content, so that's things other than the textbook itself. Topic repositories, repositories of topically specific open content. I like this Stanford Engineering Everywhere. It's specifically open engineering content. Different institutional repositories, these are repositories, these are all the state ones that I could find. A lot of good content there as well. Open textbooks is what I'm going to talk about first. And that is, how do you find an open textbook? Now, we are members of the Open Textbook Network. And this network actually produces or provides an open textbook library. This library contains hundreds of books. Right here it says 779 textbooks, with more being added. One of the things I really like about this platform for putting textbooks is it provides an opportunity to actually review the texts. So you can actually find reviews. So none of these, oh, here's one. So problem solving in teams and groups. When you go into the content, you can see that there are 3 reviews, and these reviews are by people. So it tells you who they are, where they work, when it was reviewed, and then their review, why they gave it 4.5 stars or 4 stars. So it's really powerful to use things like that to get an idea of what other faculty are using and how they're using it. The other content you have in this is a table of contents, and then how you can see it. So you can see it just online, or you could see a PDF of it. And some others have other reading platform formats that you can download it in. And here you see the conditions of use. So the Creative Commons license, this is just attribution, which means you can change it. You could actually make money with it, as long as you say who it was originally authored by. You can use it in any way you need. So if you find a chapter or 2 out of here you want to use, you're able to pull that and put it into your new content. This is one of the ways that you can find content on this. If we scrolled far enough, so this one right here, Management Communication, this is the one that was created by BYU faculty in the business school. And you can go into it and read it. It has 4 reviews, looks like 4.3 to 4.5 stars. Anyway, that's how you can look for things on this particular platform, this open textbook library. It is truly a great resource. And these others are other sources you can look at. OpenStax is from Rice University, which is, they've just produced a bunch of open textbooks that you can use. There's many, many there, and they have some open content that is related to the textbook, like quiz questions. And their program is so nice that to get any of the faculty or the instructor content, you have to be vetted by them to prove that you are faculty somewhere. It's really nice. Last thing I want to show under this Open Educational Resources tab is this Mason OER Meta Finder. This is a very powerful meta search. And so it's searching through so many different, excuse me, repositories of open educational resources. And it is very powerful. I'm going to do the search that I did yesterday, actually, for biology. Say you're teaching a biology course and you want some content. You can do more specific searches. This brings back a lot of content. So first off, you see there are 743,000 items that it's searching through, and it's found over 1,000 open content. You can look at it through topics. You can do it by publication types. Anyway, you can limit it to all of these things. The one limitation to this is often there are things like this thing from Digital Public Library of America. 1831 to 1902 was the author. It was put online in June of 2020, but if the author died in 1902, chances are the content in biology will be a little bit outdated. So that's the one thing you have to be careful with this one. This one I really like because it can provide so many possibilities. So with that, last thing I'm going to say before I ask for questions is I am available and happy to help in any way that you need me to. Librarians are happy to help. We just want to make sure that you get what you need for your courses. We want students to have the best educational experience possible. And now that we're moving into this new hybrid model during this time, we're just not sure what it's going to be, but to give students first day access to high quality content can be a very powerful tool for them and for you. Reach out to us, reach out to your librarian, and seek for help in finding content. We're happy to do it. So now, any other questions or discussion that you want to have? And I'll show the last slide so you can see my contact information.
Michael, can I add something?
Sure.
So just talking about that MCOM book, so funding is tricky. It's hard to get funding to write one of these, and so that's been a big challenge. But one of the ways around it that the MCOM people have figured out is to make the OER free and open, but then they created course content like PowerPoint slides and quizzes and tests and those kinds of things that they offer. And I think it's something like $100 per course that a university would pay to have access to that. And that provides funding for upkeep and for creation. So you can be creative with how you use, the OER. You do have to keep that open, but there's other ways to create funding or go through the BYU store. They also help publish online books.
Yeah, the BYU store actually is a great resource if you want to post some things there. They have a couple of open platforms you can use. Some of them will charge students a small fee, like $10 per textbook. Others will allow you to put open content on for free. They may have some ancillary materials that will help develop the course. There are a lot of resources you can reach out to at the store as well. And like Christy said, being creative with funding, the hardest part is the initial funding to produce if you're going to create. The nice thing about adopting or adapting, there's very little financial overhead that is needed to actually adopt or adapt. To create, obviously there are different models to do that as well. And I'm happy to help you find funding, though through the library and campus, there isn't a lot currently. So Tricia, are there any restrictions on how you can make these resources available for students? Could you put course resource materials in a shared box folder for students? That is a very interesting question. I would suggest talking to Course Reserve for that specific question, but that is interesting because they can actually limit a box folder to specific people on campus, and all students have access to box. So that is very interesting. It would be a little bit of overhead, but that is a very interesting question to ask them. And the question I would ask is there a difference between the way Course Reserve provides it and box? that's another way to look at it. But there aren't, the restrictions would be limited to technology, first of all, but then just based on the copyright practices for the different content and the different content types. Those would be the limitations. And again, if you have copyright or access questions, talk to the Copyright Licensing Office. They're happy to work with you. Did that answer your question, Tricia?
Yes, thank you. I'll check with them.
All right. Any other questions? Okay, if anything comes up and you just need something answered, feel free to reach out to me. My email address is on the screen. It will be attached to this recording. Just let me know. Like I say, I'm so happy to help you in anything you need in finding content, in publishing content. I'm familiar with a bunch of the publishing platforms. I'm happy to help in any way I can. And thank you for this opportunity, and thanks for coming.
Well, thanks everyone for coming today, and we will see you at another session probably next week if we can, and have a great 24th of July weekend.